with Cliff, and we are getting wet. Yeah, we're here. Check out his channel, guys. He is with the Wandering Woodsman and out of Pennsylvania. Great show, great channel. The fort here, according to the plaque, was built in 1756, and this was a French and Indian War fort, and it was abandoned in 1759. It actually never really saw any kind of battle with the Indians. I mean, as you can see why. I mean, the walls here are probably 15-20 feet tall of stone. And the colonists, it says, abandoned the fort in 1759 when the Indian raids subsided. If you guys haven't checked out Cliff's channel, The Wandering Woodsman, he's doing an episode on Fort Necessity. And so he's kind of doing a little series on the French and Indian forts as well. We did not plan it this way. I was actually watching his show, and here Chick and I were doing videos on the French and Indian forts down in West Virginia. Look at this. Okay, now this here wall, I don't know if you can see this. All right. It's probably 20 foot tall. Huge, massive stone wall. And again, this fort was never taken. The French or the Indians weren't able to capture this fort here. And of course, they couldn't build robust forts like this all up and down the Appalachian spine. But Colonel George Washington at least wanted something similar to this in wood. And he wanted bastions, he wanted officer quarters, he wanted ensign quarters, powder magazines, he wanted all of that. And you know, he requested fewer forts, but more robust forts. And unfortunately, the Virginia Assembly disagreed because they only had so much money, and they tried to do as much as they could with as little as they had. And unfortunately, a lot of colonists and settlers, people died as a result. So here we are. Shows that this is a National Historic Landmark. And I'm sure they had gates in here. They probably had sentries here on either side that would fire down into any approaching Indians. All right.
Fort Frederick, Maryland. We're sitting in the most substantial British colonial French and Indian War fort built during the entire French and Indian War. The walls go up 18 feet. There are actually 3 walls. There's an inside and outer wall, and there's an inner wall that's filled with sand and mud to act as a shock absorber if cannonballs hit the wall. There's some evidence in this fort that there were internal earthen defensive structures that may have gone up as much as 16 feet high, out 16 feet, held in place by timbers, so you could put at least 50 men in a 6-pound cannon in each bastion. The reason we don't have that context today for the video you're watching is because in the Revolutionary War, Fort Frederick becomes a prison camp, and all of the defensive structures have to be removed so that they won't be used as escape routes by the prisoners. So you've got a fort that is set to look like it's 1756 with walls that look like it's 1778 when this was a prison camp. In addition, Fort Frederick becomes a farm, and where you're looking out in this nice green grass in between the 2 barracks, you would have fruit trees, you would have a bank barn back in that bastion, hog pen up in this bastion. In 1860, it's owned by a freed African-American, Nathan Williams, who buys it for $5,000. He pays off his mortgage before the end of the Civil War, sends 2 of his children to Storr, which is an African-American university above Harper's Ferry, and they start one of the earliest African-American schools at the top of the property. In 1921, Maryland buys Fort Frederick back. It becomes the first state park in Maryland. In 1933, the CCC comes in and repairs the 30% at the top of the walls. 70% of the walls are the original stone from 1756. The barracks were built in 1976 to give it context. They had a significant facelift a year ago because of COVID, new roof, new flooring, and new paint. The buildings themselves didn't last very long for a couple of reasons. One, the climate really isn't conducive to wood lasting. The other thing is that what you see, the wood clapboard siding, is actually historically accurate. So because finished wood is so hard to come by, when Fort Frederick's abandoned as a fort in 1759, some of Fort Frederick is taken by local residents for use in construction of their own dwellings. That's a quick synopsis of Fort Frederick. So anybody watching, if you come here, you'll know how Fort Frederick came to be and what happened to it.
Thank you very much. You said it better than I could. Absolutely.
I'm used to saying it. I get to say it 50 times a day. You don't.
Yeah. Now, this building and that building.
Yeah, that side today, they would have both been the same. But in modern times now, because up there you see where the what we call the governor's house. See it over there?
Oh, it's okay. So it's in the center there.
All we know about it was tastefully constructed 2-story dwelling with arched doors and windows. So we can't reconstruct it. Over there, that barracks will show you the officers, and on the top floor there, you'll see the doctors and the doctor's office and the infirmary. On this side, you'll see the enlisted men. There's also the officer's kitchen. The enlisted men are down there. Officer's kitchen here. The women's room upstairs. There were 8 women employed by Fort Frederick, 4 on each side to do laundry. And they were paid the same as a soldier, 9 pence a day. It takes 3 days to do. You boil water and you soak them. Then you boil more water and you shave lye soap into it and then stick your hands in and wash it. Then you squeeze it out, boil more water and rinse it. And then there's a 4th boil of water where they call it bluing. And it's because what you're doing is re-bleaching the shirts to white. Because in this era, vegetable dye. If I run around in too much rain in this, I'm going to have a pink shirt. That's not real conducive to scaring your enemy away. So they'd have bleached it back to white when I had it washed. Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania all spent as much time fighting each other for where boundaries were going to be as they did the French and Indians. So when they were getting ready to build Fort Frederick, they weren't entirely sure that Old Town wasn't part of Virginia. So then they go, well, we got another spot, and it's where the Potomac comes down like this and goes that way. We'll set Fort Frederick there, and that's where we're here in what today is Big Pool.
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania, East Virginia, so we don't really
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mason-Dixon, they brought Mason-Dixon along because they were tired of the scrapping.
You guys see these in my videos. We dig these up when we're detecting, and these are colonial buckles and the knee buckles. We find these as well, the knee buckles. And
yeah, they're basically similar to a garter. They'll hold your they're designed to hold your socks up.
And then we find a lot of these buttons.
Yeah, they're your standard pewter button. They'd have been very, very common, in this period, particularly for American clothing because pewter is cheap. You get to, for instance, if you get to a battle where there's British military units, if you find buttons, a lot of times they're going to be sterling silver. It's going to have regimental designation like 64th Regiment of Foot or 71st or 42nd Royal Highlanders. So they're going to be much more elaborate than anything that we're wearing.
Yeah. Yeah, most I find are either pewter or brass or the vent buttons.
Yeah, those are common. Those are fairly common. They can be either civilian or military, actually.
this weekend. Was kind of a spur of the moment trip. And man, it's awesome. Very, very, very cool. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that little tour. This little history tour. Didn't do any metal detecting on this, but man, we got to see some history, didn't we? Some French and Indian history, some early American history on the western frontier of the Virginias, Maryland, Pennsylvania. Hope you learned something about Fort Frederick. I'll tell you something real quick. When we pulled in, I had my shirt on, and the guy parked right beside us came over and said, hey, you know, I watch your channel. And I was sitting there talking to him, and Cliff came over and introduced himself, and he's like, I know all about your channel too. So check it out. Check out the Wandering Woodsman. All right, until then, we'll see you guys on the next episode.